Yep, we have a single rail Spitfire transmission on the bench. I don't have a video about one of these, so I just started working on this one and I thought maybe it's a good idea to show you a little bit more about it because it's different. I mean, if you look at it, the bottom part is the same as GT6 and Spitfire and even very similar to TR6, but the top part here where the shifter is and all that, it's totally different and it's interesting, so I wanted to show you that. A little bit of history of these transmissions. The owner of the white Spitfire that I've done lots of work on this channel last year, he got this transmission, he was given this transmission with a J-type overdrive on it, and he would like to install it on his Spitfire, but it was in unknown condition. So he wanted to check it quickly and make sure that everything is okay before we install it in the car. And he started taking it apart, and then he realized that maybe it's not a good idea because kind of overwhelmed him a little bit, which is understandable. So he brought it to me, and I'm gonna go through it and make sure that everything works. So the first thing I noticed is the input shaft has a lot of play here. So yes, he was right. For sure, he was right to take it apart. I don't know about the overdrive yet. It turns no problem. It doesn't make crunchy sounds, so probably it's in a good shape. But when you look at this here, a bolt with 1000 washers and stuff, so I guess we're gonna take that apart as well and we're gonna inspect it. And probably we're gonna replace all the seals, gaskets, O-rings and all that. But since the transmission has been taken apart, I wanted to show you how it works in the first place, because that's the interesting part about this transmission. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking. So the weather is pretty crappy. I'm sorry about the raining noise, but it is what it is. So let's see what's inside here. Okay, so if we take this out for a second, this just limits how far this shaft spins. This is the shifter shaft. It switches between first and second position, third and fourth position, and reverse position. So this limits it how far it can turn. So we're gonna take it out, and here, if we put it in neutral somehow, okay. So this is neutral position, and you can see here that we have, just like on the earlier transmissions with 3 shifting shafts, we have 3 shifting forks, or one is not fork for the reverse, but these literally look like forks. Each of these forks is responsible for one hub ring. So on top of the synchro hub we have a ring, which if we slide forward is, say, 4th gear. If we slide backwards, it's 3rd gear. And then we have another hub that's responsible for 1st and 2nd gear. It's actually the other way around here, but doesn't matter. And then we have this for reverse. So if we slide this backwards, that's 1st gear. If we slide it forward, that's 2nd gear. If we slide this backwards, that's 3rd gear. If we slide this forward, that's 4th. And then if we slide this backwards, that's reverse. So the engineers needed to figure out a way to move these 3 individually, but also when we move one, we need to make sure that the other 2 are locked in place and they don't shift as well, because we don't want to go in 1st and 4th at the same time, for example, or 1st and reverse. So that's why they came up with this clever interlocking sleeve, I should call it, or whatever it is. So it is just loose on top of the shaft. It's not attached to the shaft at all. So you don't need to see what's happening underneath. We only need to know how to slide this and this and this individually without moving the other 2. So the shaft can spin back and forth, and it spins interlocking sleeve with it. What shifts though are these pins. This pin is responsible for the 1st and 2nd fork and for reverse. And there's another pin that I don't know if you see here. You see the pin that doesn't move. That's permanently attached to the shaft, and this pin is what shifts the third and fourth fork. Now this pin hooks up in this slot here. Let me move you on the other side now. So when we shift this way, this pin goes into this slot here, and now if we move the shaft back and forth, you see it is moving this fork. In the meantime, this sleeve locks the reverse and the third and fourth fork together. So if we move one, we move the other, and they're basically locked together. So now we can slide this backwards. If we push it hard, and that's our first gear. You see how we moved this without moving this and this. If we slide it back this way, that's neutral. And now we can slide it forward, and that's why we have this slot on the interlocking pin to allow us to slide it forward. And again, it's still locked to this fork. I need to keep it in the same orientation up. So that's our second gear. And again, these two are locked, they don't move because this sleeve is keeping them together. So now in order to go to third and fourth, we need to go back to neutral, which is here. And now we are able to turn the whole shaft together with the sleeve to a position in which now this pin here fits inside the slot there of the third and fourth. Now right here underneath you can see the flange, this flange of the sleeve and the other end of this flange here. They lock these two together, this and this, and the pin is in that slot. So now if we push forward, if we push backwards again the whole shaft, now it moves. Oh, that's my finger there. Now it moves only this without moving this and this, and that's third gear. If we go back to neutral and push a little bit more, that's our fourth gear. And these are still locked together, the reverse and first and second fork. And now in order to go to reverse, we need to push the shaft back to neutral. And now we can turn even more the shaft this way, and now the pin engages with the fork for the reverse, while this flange and this flange here lock these two forks together, so they can't move. And now we are able to slide this backwards, and that's our reverse. And that's all. That's how it works. It's really clever and pretty simple. The only complicated part is the shape of this sleeve, but we don't need to worry about it. It is invented already, we don't need to invent it. So how does this turn? Well, for that we need to put the cover on. So we're gonna take this. This gets engaged with the shifter shaft that comes from literally from the shifter. Okay, and I forgot to mention something that you would say, well, okay, while we are in reverse, let's say, and these two are locked together, what keeps them from moving back and forth? You're right. This plate here that we just took off not only limits how much you can turn it left and right, but it also holds the interlocking pin in place. Like that. So whichever two forks are locked together can't move back and forth because they have to move with the sleeve, and the sleeve is locked with this plate. Then we can put the cover back on, just temporarily. Now we have this shifter box, or I don't know what we should call it, which takes the shaft like this, and this is where your actual shifter fits. But I'm gonna take it out for now, we don't need it. And this goes through. There's an O-ring here that we're gonna change because otherwise oil is gonna leak through. And we lock it with this pin. And now when we turn this, it turns the whole shaft. You can see it. You can see it spinning here, the end of it. Right? So now if we go all the way to the left and we slide backwards, well, it's hard to do it, but first second, neutral. Now we turn it a little bit, third, fourth, and then neutral and reverse, like this. Okay, so that's how the shifter works. Now let's see how we can take it apart. Now I undid the bolts for the overdrive adapter, and to pull it out we actually need to remove this plastic plug or whatever it is. And inside here we have these slots, and there's behind these slots inside there's a spring and a bow, and that's what locks our shifter in position for first and third, and for second and fourth, and reverse at the same time, and neutral. So there's 3 slots on the shaft, and the bow like falls into each of them, but when you push harder, the bow overcomes the tension of the spring, allows the shaft to shift, and when we are in the next position it goes click and goes into the next shifting position. I'm gonna tap it gently. There you go, it started coming out, and now I don't want to lose the bow and the spring from here, so I'm gonna put my thumb there. They're gonna fall down probably, but through the shaft hole, at least the bow probably is gonna fall down, but I'm gonna try not to lose it. It's actually not a bow, it's a cone, and it didn't come out, so we're just gonna keep it there. We don't need to take it out as long as it moves properly. Like I can feel the thing moving back and forth, it's good there. Okay, it's not gonna come out. Good. So that is what locks in these 3 slots here and gives us the first and third position, neutral position, and second, fourth, and reverse position. Alright, so now off camera, because I forgot to press the record button, I removed the roll pin from here, and I actually removed this roll pin as well. I realized I didn't have to, but it's already removed, and I dropped it inside, so we're gonna find it, don't worry. So this is how we take it out now. I loosened also this, and I have to remove it so we can slide this back like this, and that's gonna allow us to take out this end out, and now we can take the whole assembly out. So the only thing that I didn't have to do was to remove this pin. I forgot that we can leave it there. And these are the forks that shift the gears. This is the ring that needs to be slid that way for fourth, and this way for third, and this is the ring which needs to be slid that way for second, and this way for first, and also the teeth outside are actually the reverse gear that engages with a little gear down there. You're probably not gonna see it, but there's a little gear down there that engages with these teeth. That's for reverse. Okay, so now here, this is the play that we are after. You see, this is the input shaft, this is the output shaft. They are not connected here. They are, one has a pin, one has a slot, and they go one inside the other, and there's a bearing in between that holds them in place. And this bearing somehow has too much play. So we need to take the input shaft out and replace that bearing. The problem is that to take the input shaft out, we need to drop the counter shaft, which is under these gears. And I'm not going to explain how this works. I have a video that explains that. I'm going to put the link here. It explains how the Triumph transmission works, because it is very similar between the TR6, TR4 transmission and the Spitfire GT6 transmission. They are very, very similar. So we need to drop the counter shaft down, or the lay gear as they call it, in order to be able to pull the input shaft out. So to take it apart, first of all, I'm going to take the reverse gear out so it's out of my way. So we have a spacer here that limits how far the gear goes, and then the actual gear. We're gonna have to take the shaft out, this shaft, and this shaft is held here with a set screw or a pin. This pin holds this shaft in place. So now we should be able to pull it out like this and take the gear out as well. But we can't take the gear out, so because it's interfering here also with the play gear and I believe the first gear as well. So we need to take the whole cluster out before we go there. So in this case I'm gonna put the shaft back to hold it in place because otherwise it's gonna be in my way. So now we have to remove the shaft from the lay gear, and for that we're gonna use our dummy shaft. Now, if you go to the Most Motors website, they have beautiful schematics with all the parts and everything. So this is the lay gear that we are after, and this is the shaft that holds it in place. But here we have roller bearings. They're not cage bearings. So cage bearings are like this, you know, where they want the rollers are gonna stay in place no matter what. Here though, these roller bearings, they go inside this lay gear, and when the shaft goes inside, that's what holds them in place. But if we pull the shaft out, all these rollers are gonna start falling out. So that's why we need another shaft, which I have here, a used shaft from another transmission, which we're gonna cut a little bit shorter, so it is just long enough from one end of the lay gear to the other, but doesn't stick out of the gear, so we can take the gear up and out while there's still a shaft inside, which is gonna hold the bearings in place. You see how the shaft sticks out here and it goes inside the casing here. We need to cut this shaft long enough to be just a little bit shorter than the internal dimensions of the casing here. We don't want it too tight though, because there's thrust washers on each side of the gear, and we want these to be free, so we're gonna make it just a little bit shorter. I have another one, but this is for earlier transmission, and that one has much shorter lay gear, so I was gonna use this one, but it turns out that I need longer one for here, so that's gonna be another special tool now. Let me cut it and I'll bring you back. There you go. It's a little bit shorter than the internal dimensions here, so now I'm gonna start pushing it through this on this side like this, and I'm basically gonna replace the other shaft with this one. There we go. It just pushes this one out. We're gonna inspect this one. It doesn't have any ridges or nail catchers, so we don't need to replace it. And now I'm gonna push this just enough so the lay gear can drop down inside the box. Now it's not held on this side and it's not held on this side, and it basically falls down. Now you can see how the whole gear together with the shaft moved that way, and that's gonna allow me now to pull out the input shaft from here. And this is how we're gonna attempt to remove it. So it needs to come out together with the bearing in this direction, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up on it and I'm gonna hammer here, and that's I was expecting a little bit more fight, but it came out. So that's it. You see how close this part of the lay gear is, and it was basically interfering with this teeth for the synchro ring. So that's why the lay gear needed to move down so we can pull this shaft out. Actually, this is the bearing that we are after. It doesn't feel terrible. Is the main shaft worn? I don't know. No, the main shaft is not worn. Is this part worn? Doesn't look like it. Let me hook you up here. Doesn't look like it is worn. But why was the bearing so loose? I don't know. Well, maybe this much play is okay, but I can't be sure. Also, I can pull out the first synchro ring from here, and we can check that. That's the synchro ring for fourth gear, and when we push it against the actual gear, we need to have here at least 30 thou. 30 thou is the limit. Recommended is about 45 thou here, gap, but if the inside of the synchro ring gets worn, that allows it to go further in, and if this gap becomes less than 30 thou, then it is time to replace it. So let's measure this. So I have 20 and 21, that's 41. Yeah, we are well within limits. 41 is where we are. Actually, when I press on it, it's not. Can't shove it in. You do it this way. You press on it here. Yeah, I can still put it in. So this synchro ring is good. Now, how do we remove the rest? Because now that we are here, we're gonna take everything apart in order to inspect it. That's what we were commissioned for, to inspect everything and make sure that everything works well. Now, in order to take this cluster with all the gears and the main shaft included out, this bearing needs to come out this way, but the shaft with the gears need to come out that way. So the shaft is gonna come down, the gears are gonna come up, and we're gonna take everything together out this way. But again, for that reason, we need to pull the bearing out. So first of all, we need to remove the cam for the overdrive. This is what drives the oil pump for the overdrive, so we need to get rid of that. Have this wood roof key here that we have to remove as well. Okay, we're gonna run it over some sandpaper later to make sure that if we've done any damage to it, it's gotten rid of, so it allows the cam to slide back. There's another circlip here that we want to remove that holds the bearing on the shaft. And now we can push the shaft in, and the bearing is gonna stay where it is because of this external circlip. So I'm gonna hold here with one hand the hub, because the hub and the synchro ring for third gear can come out. I don't want them to come apart completely. So I'm gonna hold them in place, and I'm gonna take a lead hammer, so it's a soft hammer so we don't damage the shaft, and I'm gonna tap it here. There you go, it moves on the bearing. The bearing stays where it is, the shaft moves in. Okay, that's what I didn't want to happen. The hub, this hub in the back started coming apart, but that's fine, we're gonna assemble it later. There's springs and ball bearings there that we wanted to keep in place, but they started coming off. That's fine, we're gonna assemble them later. There you go. So the shaft is free on the bearing. Now we have to pull the bearing this way. We're gonna use the circlip for that. Or I can try and tap on the outer race from inside. There you go, it comes out. It's not that, it shouldn't be that tight there, you know. There you go. There's a washer here at the end, shouldn't forget that. And now this whole cluster we should be able to take out this way. There you go. I'm gonna put it like that first. There's half washers here, there's one more inside. We shouldn't lose anything. I'm gonna take out the reverse gear now. There she is, in a pretty good shape. That's good. And now the lay gear down there, together with the dummy shaft. You have to be careful not to take the shaft out, because you see the roller bearings, we might lose them, and same on this side. So we have to be careful with this dummy shaft, keep it in place. So I'm gonna keep it standing up like that. And last but not least, there's these thrust washers that we want to make sure that they're in a good shape. We might just buy new ones just in case. They are actually, this one comes here and the other one goes on the other side of the lay gear. This is the roller that we lost, but what I'm missing is the springs and the ball bearings from the hub. So here's the hub, and we have, okay, this is one spring. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3 springs, and we have 1, 2 balls, and the third one I believe I put away already, yes. Okay, and we have the third ball bearing. And that's what goes inside here. So now that we know that they were here, we're gonna just put them away. Okay. We're gonna inspect all the parts, including all the synchro rings. So there's the other half of the half washer. So this is not broken, that's how it goes. It goes inside there. And that's normal, don't worry. We have multiple thrust washers here. So we're gonna have to measure all tolerances and everything. But another synchro ring. This is the other hub. It also has 3 springs and 3 balls inside. This is notorious circlip right here that breaks. And when you have first and reverse, but you don't have second, third, and fourth gears, even if you put on second, for example, it just pops off. That's what it means. This circlip here is broken. So let's take it out. You see, it's super hard to take this circlip out, but when you want it to stay, that's when it comes out on its own. So we're gonna replace it. I wouldn't reuse it because it loses its strength and all that, you know. We're gonna put a fresh one. Finally. See, we distorted it by the time we took it out, so definitely we're gonna install a new one. It costs cents, but it causes lots of trouble. So now we should be able to take all the rest of the gears out with all their bushings. We're gonna measure the tolerances here to make sure that the bushings are not worn. All the synchro rings are in a good shape. Again, we're gonna push them against the gears and measure the tolerance here. And the hub, again, you see the hub inside and you see how it slides in and out. And there you go, we have a bare shaft. Okay, so the whole transmission is taken apart and these are all the internals. So I think that's gonna be enough for this video. We showed how to take it apart. I think I'm gonna make 2 more videos. One is gonna be how to go through all the parts, inspect them, take measurements and all that. And then the 3rd video is gonna be, of course, how to assemble it. About the overdrive, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take it apart and I'm gonna inspect it and order parts and replace whatever it needs to be replaced. But I don't think I'm gonna film that because I already have a J-type overdrive series on my channel. And there's a whole playlist, you can watch it up there. And quite frankly, I'm pretty happy with how that series explains everything. It's again 1 episode taking it apart, 1 episode of inspecting, and 3rd episode of assembling it. So I don't need to create a new series, and we're gonna focus only on the transmission in this video series. So stay tuned for the 2nd and 3rd episode of the transmission overhauling. I thank you for watching, commenting, subscribing, sharing and supporting me on Patreon, PayPal, and by sending me parts and tools and stuff like that. I appreciate it, guys, so thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.